everyone, and welcome back to another commentary. I'm Captain Logan.
I'm Adam.
Adam joins me to talk about something today that's not Star Trek, but still science fiction. Yeah, some goofy space opera today. Adam, thanks for joining me again, buddy. I'm excited to do something different. You and I did Stargate months and months and months ago.
Yes.
And we had planned on doing other sci-fi stuff, and we just haven't gotten to anything else besides some Star Trek. And now we're back, and we're going to do Hitchhiker. Brandon couldn't make it to hang out with us today, but Adam was able to come over, so we said, well, let's watch something else. What should we watch? And I realized that Hitchhiker is on Netflix right now. Of course, Netflix is constantly rotating stuff in and out, so by the time you listen to this, who knows if it will be there, but at least at this very moment in time as we're watching it, you can watch it on Netflix, and I thought, well, that's a thing that maybe some folks will watch with us even if they don't have a copy, and a thing that I have meant to talk about for years and have just never gotten around to. This is not, of course, my favorite version of it, but it will be fun to get to talk about Hitchhiker at large a little bit as we're watching this movie, and there's a lot of great stuff in this movie, and overall, I like it a lot. And I think it's maybe about the best you could do with a big-budget attempt at doing Hitchhiker mainstream. Because it's about the least accessible to a giant, regular popcorn-eating audience thing that you could make. Like, it's not even a straightforward narrative.
Right.
And so they're trying to turn that into a traditional three-act movie.
Right, exactly.
And I think they did the best they could with it.
Right, and especially compress it then into a little under 2 hours.
Yeah, that's really tough, too. Because you remember the original radio show went all the way through Restaurant at the End of the Universe. Restaurant was actually part of the original story. It's kind of in two halves, but it's not broken up. If memory serves, it's been a very long time since I've listened to it, but it's not broken up like the books are, where we just go straight into Restaurant. And
I have not listened to the radio show.
Have you not?
No.
So you are aware that that's where it all starts?
Yeah. I've read the book, and it's been a long time. So I'm kind of a newbie on this.
Sure. Or at least rusty. At least a little rusty. Have you ever read past the original book? I
cannot remember.
Okay.
If I have or not.
Sure. I don't think I've ever read past the third one.
Okay.
So it starts with Hitchhiker, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and then it's Restaurant at the End of the Universe, and then it's Life, the Universe, and Everything.
Okay.
And Life, the Universe, and Everything, I reviewed once on the channel years ago, and it just kind of lost me, and it was kind of hard to move on from it. And I've heard that the last one that's just based on his notes is not great, but there are a couple of other ones that he wrote. Yeah, I think Mostly Harmless is the one that he didn't actually really write.
Is it like those Dune books written by the
sort of
the son and the Star Wars guy?
Yeah, I think so. But anyway, I'll talk a little bit about all of that as we get into this. But when was the last time you saw this?
When it came out in 2004 or
five,
I guess. And I'm pretty sure I watched it on DVD, so I do not remember very much.
And you've seen it like one time?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, it'll be fun to get to watch it with you, Adam, and we'll refresh Adam's memory here and chat about this movie as we go along. If you want to watch it with us, get out your DVD or Blu-ray or go to Netflix. However you want to watch it, get it past all the menus to timestamp 0 and get ready to press play. When I say now, we're going to jump right into it right away. Here we go. Everybody, please press play right now. Another of Sam Rockwell's real fun, goofy, nutso performances.
Yeah.
But this was 5 years before he did Iron Man 2.
True. But post-Galaxy Quest.
True, post-Galaxy Quest. Which is probably partly why they thought to go to him, and Alan Rickman, too.
Yeah. Did you ever see the Sam Rockwell movie? What was it called? That was the one where he played Chuck Barris, the game show host.
Really?
CIA. Yeah, and there was all these. The guy claimed how he was in the CIA and all this stuff.
I didn't know about that.
Yes.
Interesting.
And it was like they treated it like it was like everything he said was real. So they made a whole movie of his book or whatever.
So we pull from like different narration parts throughout the radio show and the book. and put them in places where they weren't originally. This is halfway through the radio show.
Okay.
Or at least halfway through the part before you get to restaurant. And because we're trying to kind of set up story stuff and plot stuff, Hitchhiker starts real meandery. It's just like there's this bypass they want to put through the guy's house, and then somebody shows up and takes him to space. Go. And this movie felt the need to make sure that the audience was kind of more on board with the premise and the absurdity and the weirdness of it. So right away it says dolphins are the most advanced species on Earth, and the Earth is going to be destroyed. And that's all stuff you don't know for a very long time in the original material. This song just kills me. I think it's wonderful. I think it's maybe the best thing in the movie. So Long and Thanks for All the Fish. It's hysterical. I wanted Hitchhiker to be a musical after I heard this, because it's a really well written song. It's very Broadway. I love it.
Has someone done a Hitchhiker's musical yet?
If so, I don't know about it, but it wouldn't surprise me. And I think it's actually kind of right material for one. You know,
I didn't even realize Martin Freeman was in this movie till 2 seconds ago when I saw his name on
the
really?
Credits.
Yeah.
There's a lot of actors in this that retroactively I've seen and stuff, but I didn't really know from anything when this came out.
Tell like Sherlock.
I think the only ones I really knew were like Rockwell, of course I knew.
Rockwell.
And Alan Rickman. And
Helen Mirren.
You wouldn't necessarily, I don't think I even knew who that was at the time.
Yeah, and Stephen Fry.
Yeah, but I didn't know Stephen Fry at that time either.
I don't remember if I knew. I knew who Helen Mirren was. I think I knew Stephen Fry.
Oh, and John Malkovich I forgot about too.
Oh yeah, I knew Malkovich.
No, I'm just saying I forgot he was in this.
I forgot he was in this.
I forgot that's who that was, yeah. So here's the weird thing about how we handle the dolphins, though. I never pictured it as they just jumped out of the water and flew into space.
Yeah.
Which does seem like a Douglas Adams thing to do.
Just
like it's
take
not
off and escape the Earth's bounds.
It's not too far for him. I just always figured they built technology or something.
Right.
If they're the third so if they're the first most intelligent species on the planet, is it the fact that they're that intelligent that's just the reason they can fly?
Apparently so. They're angelic. So it's
I'm gonna assume
I thought it was more like those dinosaur aliens in Voyager. That the Voth.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that was a really cool idea with the Voth. It's a little silly. It's a little cheeseball, but it's it's also very Douglas Adams. Yeah. that too. So when you first saw this, you can't tell me that you didn't just lose it at that song.
That was pretty.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
I think it's very difficult to decide when you try to adapt this into something, like you said, squarely a couple of hours, just how much of the narration to use.
Right.
Because that's where most of, I would say, if not all of the lines that people really remember from Hitchhiker come from. It's not as much what people are saying, it's what the narrator and the book are saying about what's going on and about the universe.
Right.
And it was very smart to not try to lose it for this. Because, usually I don't like necessarily a whole lot of voiceover in a thing.
Right.
Usually narration in movies is clunky and kind of, and will end up feeling sort of pointless. And it's like, well, we got to put the exposition somewhere. And that can be preferable to having a lot of exposition and dialogue, of course.
Right.
But in this, you just absolutely have to have it because of the flavor and the color of it. You need
It doesn't feel like an info dump like it normally does in most contexts whenever you hear voiceover. It establishes the character, of the film.
Yeah, and I also just think that a lot of that comedy only works that way. Like, imagine if you tried to put a bunch of those lines in people's mouths. That would be awful.
Right.
But you also can't, because I could see somebody going, well, the way we're going to handle it is we're going to get rid of all the narration, and the only narration you'll hear comes from the book. I think you still have to have both. I think you have to have the book narration, and you have to have the narrator talking about what's going on.
Right. Oh, Mos Def is in this. I forgot about that, too.
Another guy I didn't know before this, and I think he's really funny in this. So, something I never really thought about until just now looking at this is this movie looks a lot like something I can't remember his name right now. The guy who directed Men in Black and the pilot for The Tick.
Barry Sonnenfeld?
Barry Sonnenfeld. It looks like a Sonnenfeld thing.
It does. It does.
It's very much in that same vein.
Right.
It's that
Where it's
flavor.
got
And I bet he loves
right.
this movie.
Where it's kind of this mix of both. It's got a realistic feel, but it's got the elements of
absurdity. There's something kind of off.
Right, off about it. Yes.
The angles are weird. The color is weird. It's oversaturated.
Right.
That's all Sonnenfeld
Right.
type stuff. I bet, like I said, I bet he loves this movie. Maybe the thing that it looks most like of his is Pushing Daisies.
Oh, yeah.
So I wonder if this is one of those movies that in some ways might appeal more to an audience if they roll with it, if they get the comedy, because this kind of comedy isn't necessarily for everybody,
Right.
but especially people that like are maybe already primed for British comedy but somehow didn't experience Hitchhiker.
Right.
I wonder if somehow those people might enjoy this movie a little bit more than the initiated, because the frustrating thing for me about it is just all of the stuff that's truncated.
Right, and then stuff that didn't make it in, too, just because of
Just because
the
of time.
constraints of the film.
And you always have that, of course, with a book
adaptation.
adapted to a movie. But the difference is, what you lose with Hitchhiker is just a lot of stuff, a lot of like plot and story stuff,
Right.
Before it's like character details. Because if you go back and read that the book version, Douglas Adams doesn't do a whole lot of description.
Right.
He's not a description guy. I mean, it's all very dialogue driven because he's a scriptwriter, and that's what he knows. And that first book as a book is real clunky. The pacing is real off and kind of everywhere, and it's almost not a book.
Right.
And he knows it.
It's more of a I guess you could say a philosophical. It's not a narrative like a novel. It's more like it is, but it's more like a philosophical.
Because it'll just run off on the tangents.
Right.
And it's almost like a parody of a philosophy book,
Right.
as much as it's a parody of a science fiction novel.
Right.
And so, a lot of it's just impossible to get a lot of that stuff into it. Like, this needed to be a miniseries,
Right.
And if you're gonna do it as a film series, you almost need the first book to not even get to restaurant,
Right.
or the first movie to not even get to restaurant. You almost would want to just do like the first half, or somehow, I don't know, put them out together or something. But like, again, I think it's handled as best as it possibly could be, but this is not the right format for this.
Right. I heard an interesting saying recently. Do you agree with this? That great books usually make for mediocre movies, but then mediocre books usually make great movies. Like most Alfred Hitchcock things are based off books
that weren't great.
Yeah, that nobody remembers.
You ever read The
Aside from
Birds?
Rebecca, yeah.
Because it sucks.
Yeah.
Like, or at least I remember it not being very good. I remember The Birds being like, wait, that's it?
Or even the stuff like Vertigo. That's based off a book, but nobody
Is it?
remembers. It's like called like The Executioners, I think, or something.
I remember thinking The Birds was for the birds,
Yeah.
Adam. So there are, of course, some pretty typical movie things thrown into this to try to keep in a kind of regular mainstream audience,
Right.
Involved. And one of them is turning This New Love Story
Right.
with Trillian.
The subplot, right.
And it's handled about as well as it could be, I think.
Right.
I like her as this kind of free-spirited
Right.
girl that just is like really impulsive and just wants to travel.
And this must have been one of her earlier roles too, because I had seen her in Elf, I guess, but after that.
Yeah, I don't think I had seen her in anything before this. This is probably my favorite Trillian, which isn't saying a lot. She tends to be a really annoying character. In the radio show, she's better. I mean, maybe she's on par with this, honestly. But in the miniseries, she has the most shrill, obnoxious voice in the universe, and you just want to punch her in the face every time she's on screen. It's really unfortunate.
Right.
It's really unfortunate.
Now, you said the miniseries It's real hit and miss on a lot of the realizations of
the production stuff. Yeah, they shot for the moon and just got about halfway there.
I've never seen it. Is it on like videotape like Doctor Who is? Is it like
Yes.
old Doctor Who?
Yes.
Is it like
It looks
Doctor
a
Who
lot
where like
like
some stuff in old Doctor Who
Who.
looks really great, and then some stuff is like, oh my God.
I don't know a lot about the production of that series, but I would be surprised if nobody who worked on Doctor Who didn't also work on that.
I'm sure they
because
probably
Douglas Adams wrote for Doctor Who. He wrote episodes of that show before he wrote
If it was
Hitchhiker.
shot on videotape, I guarantee you it was filmed in the same building in London that they shot all those multi-camera.
Or if not before, right
productions.
around the same
Right.
time. I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember. Do you know what your key to time is? Because he wrote a couple of those.
He wrote for Doctor Who like late Tom Baker.
Yeah.
Now,
But is that late 70s or early 80s?
That was Tom Baker left like 1980 or 81.
Okay, so he
yeah.
probably, because I know he did some random TV work just trying to pay the bills and was barely making it in the late 70s, and then he got his radio show made. And then he was still barely making it, but now he had his own radio show. And then he didn't get well known and big until the book version. And when the book came out, it was an instant bestseller at the top of the list, number one. He became a celebrity overnight.
Right.
Nobody knew who he was, and 48 hours later, he was everywhere. And I think Hitchhiker is bigger than a lot of people, even of our generation and certainly the generation after us, realize just how big of a deal that was. Because that was back when people still read. And, I mean, everybody read that book. And radio dramas remained a pretty big deal in Britain through the 70s and 80s.
Well, it's interesting. They still do that kind of stuff there.
Yeah. I was going to say, I mean, it's probably not as big as it was back then, but I think people still listen to it, yeah.
I think it's like everything has been, fragmented as far as the viewership and, not even television, is all... It's not like it was back in the day where there was 2 networks, so radio, I'm sure, suffered even more.
I think one of the best visual realizations of the material in this is the Vogons.
Yeah.
And they did a really good job on them. They just look gross and messy and disgusting, like you always imagined them. And that's the closest to. That's really fun. I mean, that's the closest to what I imagined of anything in this. There's some real Doctor Who throwback going on in those scenes.
Now, is this a practical effect?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's part of what's impressive about it.
Right.
Those prosthetics don't look comfortable.
Right.
This is hilarious.
It seems almost a little Jim Henson-y, too. Like,
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
80s.
and there is a lot of puppet work in
Right.
this, so
Dark Crystal Labyrinth, Jim Henson.
I think this joke is really funny. Just zooming out with just stills. and like they're not being lazy, they're animating it now.
Right.
That's really funny. So here I want to say right after this has been a while since I've seen this, but I've watched this a lot. I think right after this is where here it comes. Is where we're gonna get Journey of the Sorcerer. I love this song. I think it's one of the greatest themes of anything. And it was not written for Hitchhiker. This is an Eagle song.
Oh, really?
Journey to the Sorcerer is an Eagle. I'll check and see the album because I can't remember the name of it. And it's one of, if not their biggest album. Like most of the Eagle songs you've heard of were. It was one of these nights.
Okay.
Most of the Eagle songs you know are on that album, or at least a lot of them are.
Okay.
And but a lot of people don't realize that this came from that, and this doesn't have lyrics. It was an instrumental. This is a 6-minute instrumental.
Oh, really?
And the best way I can describe it is as like ambient banjo music.
So it's really one of those deep cuts from the record, not a radio friendly single. Definitely.
Exactly. And now we've got it gloriously orchestrated with a big orchestra, and it sounds awesome. The only thing that hurts my feelings about it is that that's the only place you get it.
Right.
That's a callback before it's anything.
Right.
That doesn't get to be the theme of this movie, and we don't keep working it into the score.
Right.
But it got its moment. It got its cameo, and it's glorious. So now we get the guide, and we finally have a visualization of the guide. Which, I mean, the miniseries does too, but I can't remember exactly what it looks like now, because it's just been forever since I've seen it. But it's kind of amusing, because it sort of looks like... it looks like an old Mac OS system or something. So I think we were pretty smart about, again, a lot of the narration that we bring into this, and all of the stuff, all the major lines you've heard are in this, and then there's some other things here and there that people don't quote all the time that made it too, but like, you know, you of course have to have the don't panic thing,
right.
and you have to have well, actually, we've been talking over it. I can't remember if it did it or if it does it later. Does the movie give us more of God's mistakes and who is this God person anyway?
I think they said yes. They did just say that.
Yeah,
yes.
It's one of my favorite lines in the book. My two favorite lines are that where we go down the who is this God person anyway trilogy, and then I think we get this in the movie too. It hung in the air like brickstone, or maybe that's not in the movie. But anyway, that's my other my favorite line. I guess I'm not sure why he has an American accent.
Yeah, but wait, and did he... I don't know if we heard it as we were talking over.
Well, that's what commentaries are like, Adam.
Right. Was he talking in a British accent when he first got there?
I thought he was!
And then it switched all of a sudden.
Oh! Okay, if that was intentional, that's actually fun.
I think that was...
Because it's like, well, I've been faking this British accent, but I'm actually from space.
Right.
So, I've always been on the fence about the towel thing with Hitchhiker, because it's one of the big things that everybody remembers from it, and it always shows up and stuff. Like, the three big things everybody knows about Hitchhiker is the towel, 42, and the Babelfish.
Right.
Those are three things everybody knows.
Right.
We never really do anything with the towel, or at least in the first story we don't. Maybe we do more with it later, and I don't remember. But, like, I think that's supposed to be the joke, is that the towel is very important, but we never ever talk about it or use it.
Yeah.
And so the first time I read the book, I was primed for this towel thing, but we don't do anything with it.
Exactly.
But Douglas Adams' comedy is all about contradictions. He called, when he wrote So Long and Thanks... Pardon me, So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, he called it the fourth book in the Hitchhiker trilogy. I love him so much. And he was as funny in person as he was scripted. Like, if you ever listen to him talk, like, he's just like that all the time.
He's all...
And he was real down to earth, but by the way, he died just before the movie came out. I don't believe he got to see it.
Okay. I was trying to remember when he passed away. I was sure I was in high school.
Vogue on poetry was always one of my favorite things.
Right.
And I actually, when I was in high school, I had to do a poetry collection for an English class, and I tried to analyze Vogue on poetry. I took all the bits in the dialogue that give us the poem, and I put the poem together, and I attempted to analyze it for imagery and metaphor and. So, with the pacing of this, again, being a mainstream movie, the big thing that it just can't do, and you probably wouldn't want it to attempt, is running off in tangents.
Right.
It will do it for a second, but then get us back in, and and does it entirely within the framework of the book.
Right.
Which, honestly, if I can be critical of Adams for a minute, is also what the book should have done more of, because the narration will also go off like that. But you have more of an excuse for it with the conceit of the book.
Right.
And if
exactly.
You know
it
what I
doesn't
mean?
work as much in a film. It's kind of like in the book Les Miserables, Victor Hugo would go off on these tangents about a lot of stuff. Whenever they do adaptations of it, they don't. He'll go like on philosophical, digressions and talking about Paris and all this kind of, and they whenever
it's just like we don't get 20
you never
pages.
see that.
We don't adapt the 20 pages at a time of whale facts
but
from
it works
Moby
in
Dick.
The book somewhat. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, look at these prosthetics. They're really impressive.
I like that they have that weird barrister.
They have the giant nose. Oh yeah. The giant nose on their forehead.
Yeah.
Hitchhiker is one of those rare things because it starts as a radio play, and I guess it would have this if it started as a book also, where there's not definitive designs for anything. Like, if you did a comic book for Hitchhiker, you could redesign it from the ground up. You could make it look anything like anything you wanted to.
Whereas if it had been a visual work to begin with, you would have always had that framework that you would have to
Or if
branch off
the
from.
miniseries had been more popular.
That's true too.
Because that could have created the definitive look for it, and then people would want to keep going back to that. If that was like the Superman of Hitchhiker, like we gave the Kryptonians a definitive look that we keep going back to, even though they've been done about 150 different ways in the comics, even at that point. But we keep going back to Donner, even these days.
Right.
I mean, we still do a lot of different variations of it, but we still go back to Donner a lot.
Right.
Hitchhiker doesn't have that at all. Even this movie isn't like that for anybody. Like, if we ever remake this, I guarantee you it will have a completely different look, and we probably won't go back and look at this movie at all in designing it.
Right. I wonder if do you think they'll do another adaptation eventually, some point?
Well, Adam, it's the name of a thing people have heard of.
Right.
And the only thing keeping Hollywood afloat these days is brand recognition.
Right.
So if somebody has the rights to it and can, milk some money out of it, I don't know who has it right now.
Right.
I'm assuming, what studio even was this?
It was New Line. No, it was Touchstone.
Touchstone?
Pictures.
It was going to be one of those, though, right?
No, it's Touchstone. That's like a Disney
that's true.
subsidiary, isn't it?
Produced by Touchstone, distributed by
Buena Vista, which is the live-action subsidiary going way back of Disney.
So I think the poem thing is really hard to realize on screen. For some reason, it works better in just audio, and I think it works better read too.
Right.
Than like watching these guys be in agony over poetry. And I think part of the reason it's hard is because you're also watching and listening to these guys doing the poetry, and it's not doing that to you.
To you, it's not like you're seeing them rather than more like just
I always love
experiencing.
this. The underlying metaphor of vogonity. Yes, vogonity. We did not take a crazy amount of creative license with this movie in most aspects of it. Again, there are two big departures, and one of them is the romance, which these guys have chemistry, so I don't mind it. Like, I figured I would when I went and saw it. Like, I liked them together. I think they're cute together. I think it works okay. And again, I like making her kind of like a wandering vagabond and making her like an actual hitchhiker, which I guess she was in the original material too, if memory serves. But we made her almost kind of like, I don't know, almost like a hippie or something. I think that works pretty well. The other big thing is Marvin the Paranoid Android is going to have a big self-sacrifice moment. And I'm pretty darn sure that's not in the original material.
I don't remember it.
It's been a long time, but I'm almost positive we don't do that there. It's almost like they thought that even though the joke of him is supposed to be he's so unlikable, we had to do something to make him endearing.
Right.
And I don't know what you think of that, but that's what they did.
Yeah, it feels like maybe a little bit of a cop-out in some ways because it's like they didn't have enough faith. It's like they feel, they didn't have enough faith in the character.
And I like his and I like his design a lot. Again, Marvin's one of those things you can make him look whatever you want to, and he looks like he was designed by the Apple Store, and I love it.
Yes. Does he what did he look like in the miniseries? Is he similar to how he looks?
Doesn't look anything like this. It's been a while. I can't remember actually. I'll look that up. We'll look at a picture. You guys will have to also look it up.
Google this.
But production values in this movie are solid.
Yes.
It was not a huge budget, but they gave it $50 million.
So that was, that's
and
pretty...
I think every cent of that is on the screen.
I'm pretty sure that's more than they were given those Next Generation Star Trek movies.
Oh, yes. I think you're right. I think you're right. And those were also big studio. And they had... But I think part of that's because they had standing sets and stuff.
That's
They're like,
true.
But not by First Contact. They had to build everything.
That's true.
I will say I think First Contact looks better than this movie. Or maybe they're on par.
Yeah.
This is also a decade after that.
Hid a lot of its stuff, too, because it was so darkly lit. So they were able to hide... any flaws in the production, shortcomings.
I'm also cool with the design of the Heart of Gold, and it and Marvin feel like they were designed by the same people. Mm-hmm. So like there's a cool consistency there. And now they're sofas. Mm-hmm. I know how you feel. See, they're sofas because of the improbability drive. Mm-hmm. I've always been interested and impressed with how much people take Hitchhiker seriously. Mm-hmm. Because it's a parody of science fiction before it's anything. Mm-hmm. But it has a lot of really interesting big ideas. Mm-hmm. And it can get kind of deep about some of its grander ideas. Not so much in character stuff, but as, like you say, the philosophy stuff, and just like, ways that you've never thought of certain concepts before, right. And like why are we here? I mean, like, Hitchhiker is now the main thing people think of when they think of the why are we here question, right. With the answer to the question of, like, the universe and everything. Right. And I like the notion that I think if Hitchhiker is about anything at its core, it's we are not the center of the universe.
Right.
And that the universe is weird and you cannot pin it down.
Right.
We're never going to understand everything.
Right.
And but because he understands the kind of, for lack of a better term, core values of science fiction, right. He's able to get away with the most soft science fiction thing you've ever watched, with almost a complete lack of internal logic, and people consider it one of the greatest science fiction books ever written, and they put it in... People will put Douglas Adams in the same sentence with people like Clarke and Asimov, and he said in interviews, yeah, I'm not one of those guys, because they were, scientists, right. And he wasn't.
Right.
I think he knew some stuff about science, but he wasn't a scientist.
Right. He wasn't like
Arthur C. Clarke built stuff.
I mean, he basically wrote a paper to come up with the idea for communication satellites.
Yeah, exactly. That's what Marvin looked like in the miniseries.
Oh, okay.
Just the most generic robot.
80s. Definitely, yeah. 80s BBC.
Yes. And here he comes. Yeah. Here's his big grand entrance.
So you would say that the central theme is like we need to embrace the insignificance of...
Yes.
And of us.
The insignificance of us, the weirdness of the universe, the fact that you can't control everything. Yes. And you need to see the humor in the horrific nature of the universe.
Yeah.
Because this feels like one of the lightest, most fun breaths of fresh air anybody ever wrote. And it's about how the planet's about to be destroyed.
Right.
It's great. And this material, not this film, but Hitchhiker is and I've talked about this a lot, but just for me personally, is at the foundation of my sense of humor and my personal writing style. The three big comedic things that influenced me growing up were this, The Tick, and They Might Be Giants.
Okay.
Those three things become the trifecta of why I have the comedic sensibilities that I have.
I could definitely see how they would all kind of interrelate.
They go together. Yeah, they sure do. And there is a soberness to this movie that makes it work better for general audiences than it might have than it might have otherwise. Where, like, it's just silly and goofy enough, but it feels like a movie. And that's really hard with this material. And some purists didn't like it for that, but if you're gonna... The problem is you have to find that balance, because if you're gonna throw $50 million at something...
Disney wants their money back.
Yeah. And you can't blame them. That's a big enough investment that you have to get more people interested than just Hitchhiker fans. You have to get more people interested in a Star Trek movie than just Star Trek fans, and that's about 15 times this audience.
Right.
And like you said, they got less money.
Right.
We think. I think what makes Marvin's design is the green eyes.
Yes.
I mean, that flash of green in the middle of all that white, and just the design of those eyes. Mm-hmm. They gave him Spawn eyes, like just right in the middle of that robot. He's got Spawn eyes.
This computer interface reminds me of like a cross between the computer from Alien and L-Cars in Star Trek.
And there's some 2001 in it too.
2001 a little bit too, yeah.
You're right. No, there is a little bit of Alien influence. I didn't think of that. Okay, so he was perfect casting for Zaphod. Mm-hmm. The way they handle the double head thing is a cop-out.
Yeah.
I don't like it. Mm-hmm. When he first shows up on screen, I'm like, okay, how are they going to handle the double head? He doesn't have a second head. Mm-hmm. And the answer is it pops up from underneath now, instead of him just having two heads all the time.
Right.
I don't love that.
I wonder if it was a way to save money.
Well, I'm sure it was, and they were probably terrified of trying to do any kind of animatronics, considering what happened in the original miniseries.
Oh, yeah.
Because do you know about that?
No, I haven't.
So Zaphod, they actually built an animatronic head, and it didn't work. It broke down on them, and they couldn't get it to do anything, so they tried to just make a joke out of it, where he has another head, and they left it on, so occasionally the servos in the mouth will just be like, and like the mouth will open and close a little bit, but it doesn't do anything. It doesn't talk. It doesn't do anything. It just sits there. Now, after things like Ninja Turtles, you think by 2005 you probably could build something.
Right, or they could have CG'd it or something.
See, but then go back and look at things where we've done that. Again, Sonnenfeld did one of the worst of them in Men in Black 2.
I have not seen that movie since it came out either. What happened to Men in Black 2?
There's a character with a second head, and it's CG, and it looks terrible.
It looks bad.
Yeah, and like his head underneath him in this is also gonna be partly CG, or does it just somehow CG pop up, but then it's his head? I can't remember. We'll see it here in a minute. But that, I don't know, that is a reveal where it's like, look, fans of Hitchhiker, here's the head. I don't mean to be too much of a purist on that, but like, Zaphod's got two heads. That barely counts as a second head. Like,
this is more like, it feels like what they did in the Total Recall with the guy with the head.
See, there it is.
Yeah, underneath.
Okay, no, his head itself is not CG, so that's good. But they're CGing it superimposed onto nothing.
Right. That's what they did. Okay. I do remember this now.
Are you with me? It's not great.
Yeah.
And it's also not funny. Mm-hmm. There's something inherently amusing about two heads that are constantly in, like trying to vie for control of a body or something. Right. But they need to both be there all the time.
Right.
It is a really difficult thing to pull off. I think the only great way to do it would be to cast twins.
Yeah.
Because then you could have both heads on camera all the time, and you wouldn't have to do any special effect for that, and you could just digitally remove a body.
Right. Now, I mean,
that's how I would do it.
I'm trying to think of things. I guess they did it with those guys. The announcer guy in episode 1.
That entire thing. He would have... And if we did it now, you're right. All of Zaphod would be a
CGI character.
Creature. It'd be Thanos. And the whole thing would be CG.
Right. And they were able to get away with it then because it didn't look human. If they had tried to make it look more, human, it probably would have not worked.
Yeah, but episode 1's credit, like, all of... And it holds up better than you'd think it would. But, like, in 99, it looked especially fantastic. But, like, all of the CG creatures, particularly Jar Jar, they look like they're there. It's amazing.
Right. And Watto.
Yeah. No pod is worth to sing! Okay, that one was kind of funny. I just happen to have a chance cube here. So, I meant to say this a long time ago. With the dolphins going out into space, there is a precedent for what the quote-unquote logic of it would be in Hitchhiker continuity. And that is, and this was, remember I told you that there was a thing in the third book that lost me? And I mean, actually, there's a lot of stuff in that book where it gets really out there. To the point where I think it kind of breaks what internal logic was there in the universe.
Right.
In that, people can fly by throwing themselves at the ground and missing.
Okay.
That's the logic for how you fly. You throw yourself at the ground and you miss.
I wonder how they would have represented that in the visual media.
It's probably for the best this only got one movie, because it would have gotten so crazy they would have been like, okay, look, I'm out. I can't even make this.
That's like I've always wondered what would happen now they got that new Dune movie coming out. If they ever get to like the fourth Dune book, where there's like a whole conversation.
I have never had. Sorry, I was going to say I've never had a shot that made me do precisely that, but I've gotten close. I've had a couple of shots that made me almost make that face.
Right.
Anyway, what is it?
I said the fourth Dune book. The whole thing is like a conversation with a guy that's like a half worm.
How would you put that
How would
on
you
screen?
do on screen?
Well, I think we can be pretty sure that the guy who made Blade Runner 2049, when he makes his Dune movie, he's not going to get 4 movies.
Yeah.
It's just not going to do well enough for him to get that
well
movie. It's amazing that he's being allowed to make to make another science fiction film, like really deep, thought-provoking, serious science fiction film after his super brilliant, one of the greatest science fiction movies ever made, and especially for a sequel film, did not perform that great. It was a little cerebral for your average eye, and a little slow, but it was amazing. I don't know where you fall on that. I like it better than Blade Runner. I just can't help myself. I know that's supposed to be like blasphemy or whatever, but I think it's better than Blade Runner.
I need to see it again.
I don't care what anybody says.
I haven't watched it since the theater.
I went to the theater and saw it 3 times, and I wasn't even a Blade Runner fan. I just couldn't stop looking at it. I also fell asleep the first 2 times, even though it's that. I think it's amazing. It is slow enough, and it's not just because it's slow. Something about the darkness in that movie, the colors, it made my eyes heavy, and I couldn't stay awake watching it.
Yeah.
So that's part of why I kept seeing it. but anyway, so a minute ago we saw. We saw our heroes drink the Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster. And when I was in high school, there was a local band called Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster. And after a few battles of the bands or whatever, or I guess I should say battles of the band. No, the bands, because it's still multiple bands. There were battles of the bands. I had it right the first time. That band felt the need to shorten their name to Pan-Galactic. It was just a little much. Hitchhiker was really popular with a lot of kids my age, and particularly in my class.
I remember, it was popular at my school too.
Was it really?
I think so.
Okay, so this is what we in the field call foreshadowing. We were told at the beginning of the film, and I like that they at least kept this a mystery. There are still mysteries to be had. It's weird to open your Hitchhiker thing right away with we are only the 3rd most intelligent creature on the planet, and our planet is doomed. I mean, we do get that pretty quickly, but there's a build up to it. There's the bypass, and it's in the galactic bypass. At the same time, which is hilariously coincidental, and is the point. Hitchhiker doesn't play by normal rules of storytelling, so it does things like that on purpose, and it can get away with it because of parody stuff. But it does keep a mystery that the most intelligent creature is mice, and of course that the Earth was manufactured, and that will be the big revelation at the end of the film. And I love that statue so much. Their realization of deep thought is awesome. I want one of those in my house, Adam. And I want it to talk to me. I want to ask it. I want to put an Alexa in a deep thought.
Right.
I want to change Alexa to deep thought.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think some of those things, Alexa only has like 2 or 3 different things you can call it.
Really?
But if you could change it to anything, I would change it to deep thought. And they'd be like, oh, deep thought! Could you play a REM song? I think that's really funny. So it feels weird to be looking at a Hitchhiker thing and we're already at Magrathea.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is like halfway into... And I guess we're not quite halfway into the film yet, but we're close. But, yeah, okay, I guess that's about right. If you're cutting out restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
See, I hate losing restaurant because it's my favorite part. Mm. But, like, this is a story. I mean, like, when you listen to the radio play, again, you kind of just go right into restaurant. But, like, you could get a whole movie out of that.
Right.
And it's good that they set it up, even though they're not going to get more movies, just because you at least have to say it that it's there. Like restaurant's too big of a deal. You gotta do something. You gotta mention it. I also love the idea of this being like Woodstock or something.
42.
Now, of course, if you look at how like regular person logic works, I'm not sure deep thought could figure out what the answer was without knowing the question.
Right.
Like, there's always this really fun kind of chicken and the egg logic with Hitchhiker, but it's like, she's like, well, it would have been easier if I'd known what the question was. Okay, but now that you know the answer, couldn't you like backtrack and figure it out faster than you're doing it here? I figured that would give you all the information you would need. Am I wrong?
Right. I think they could. Yeah, I think it could. This is Helen Mirren, definitely.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Like she's not even gonna take the 10,000 years or the 10 million years or whatever it is herself. She's got to design another machine to do it. But it's just a hilarious way to look at things.
Now, that number that always appears in Star Trek, is that 42? What's the number that appears in Star Trek?
It's 47.
47. I
yeah.
Remember.
And I don't know what the significance of that is.
I don't either.
I don't know why
47 appears.
Moore and Brandon Braga and those guys, and Moore still does it.
Really?
Apparently, he still puts it into scripts.
Really? What is he? Is he writing for that Outlander show now?
I guess I'm not sure what he's doing right now.
What he's doing.
I just heard him say that in an interview once that like he still sneaks that into scripts.
And bam.
Oh, I guess they're not at Magrathea yet, but we've already shown the audience that Magrathea is a real thing. So it was weird to do that as a flashback, but yet I love how it was realized, so I don't mind. Right. I suppose the sound effects are really funny.
So is that cube supposed to be like a data crystal?
I don't know.
It looks like a cosmic cube.
This is how we're setting up the Infinity Stones in the Hitchhiker universe, Adam.
Look at that.
Look, now we're looking at the end of Monsters Incorporated. The infinite improbability drive is one of my favorite ideas in Hitchhiker. It's hilarious because he's all about random humor, and it's a conceit that allows you to just pull random stuff out of your head and throw it into your story. And you don't need like you don't need an explanation for anything. You just go, okay, we have this drive that makes it so that like we know that anything that can happen does happen, so we turn this thing on and random stuff happens.
Right.
And so you can have people transform into yarn and stuff. And this is weird enough for Hitchhiker. I just love that they were willing to go this far.
Right.
To do crazy stuff like that. Like now it looks like we're watching an episode of like Pee Wee Herman or something.
Right.
That's pretty funny. Okay, so I don't know if I've ever brought this up before, but Trillian just said normality. So I want to mention it because this is like a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah.
I always appreciate it when somebody actually uses the original real word, because we've made it so that normalcy is okay, but that didn't used to be a word. In like the 30s, in like the 40s, I think. I can't remember which president it was, but one of the presidents in a speech, I don't remember if it was Truman or if it was FDR, somebody in a speech used normalcy.
Return to normalcy.
And and for what was that?
I don't.
Was that
remember
Truman?
which president it was.
Forevermore, you hear normalcy more often than you hear normality. Normalcy wasn't a word, but now it's a word, and that irritates me.
Language evolves, Jay.
Or devolves, Adam. Anyway, somebody said normality, so I got a chance to
I don't have
to say it.
down here.
Oh, sorry.
I was gonna see who
Well,
wrote
guys,
that.
I mean, you don't have to take my word for it. You can look it up. I may be wrong. That's a thing I
I
remember
was just curious what president
reading about
it was.
years and years ago.
Right.
So, I could be wrong, but oh yes, the
Look at
coming
that
of the
square
great
bicycle.
white handkerchief.
Square wheels.
So that's hilarious.
Before the wheel.
Before the wheel. I have always thought that Doctor Who.
That's crazy.
I've always thought that Doctor Who is almost weird enough and absurd enough to be in Hitchhiker continuity, or for Hitchhiker to be in Doctor Who continuity.
Right, exactly.
And when you look at specifically like the episodes that Douglas Adams wrote, and then just certainly even now sometimes stuff that that will get thrown into a Doctor Who episode, I'm like, it's a shame there was never a crossover. Or something.
Right.
Because it's so loosey goosey with its science.
Yeah, none of that stuff makes sense. Have you ever tried to read the Doctor Who wiki? It's insane. Like,
it's gotta be.
It's like they treat everything as continuity because the BBC has no rules about what is continuity and what is not.
Oh,
so like if something appeared on a cereal box comic in like 1965, it will be continuity or whatever, and they.
So this Church of the Great White Handkerchief thing is an example of a thing that, if memory serves, is not in the original source material. Again, I could be wrong. I think the Great White Handkerchief is mentioned, but I don't think they go to a church. I don't think so. Mm-hmm. And if I'm right, this is an example of one of those things that feels like a thing Douglas Adams would have written. Like, I think there's a really good reverence for that material and understanding of it for the most part.
Right.
And of course, he does have story credit on the script. He did apparently co-write this. I mean, I don't know if it was like he took a pass at the script or if it was just like, because the way story credits work a lot of the time is you have to take things with a grain of salt.
Right.
You can't be sure who exactly puts pen to paper.
Who did what? Right. Malkovich looks like
that's so funny.
He looks like Elton John.
Bless you. Yeah, it's kind of surprising some of the celebrity cred they managed to get in this movie.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah. Everybody in this cast is a famous person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And most of them were still pretty big when the movie came out.
Right.
Yeah. Obviously, Malkovich was a big deal. I mean, arguably, he was better known then than he is now.
Right. Yeah. I haven't seen him in anything in a while. He was
neither.
big in like the 2000s, and I don't know what's happened. I was wondering about that the other day. I was like, where's John Malkovich? That was bizarre.
Yep, that looked like an 80s rock video.
Oh, I forgot about this.
Oh, me too. Yeah, he's on spindly legs. Forgot all about that. Yeah, that's messed up.
Look, he's drinking Romulan ale.
Yeah, once again, pretty sure that this whole episode doesn't happen. In the material.
All the time.
So we mentioned how much this movie cost to make. This was a $50 movie.
$50 movie.
This is a $50 million film, and it took in $100 million. So it did better than I thought it did. It basically with advertising and stuff probably made its money back.
Right, and the DVD rentals and all that back in the day.
Yeah, but I mean, that doesn't count the box office. I'm just saying, like the
so
box office, it probably made its money back.
So when they count box office on
Wiki, it's just box office. It's not DVD sales. Yeah.
Only.
Yeah, when you keep track of it when a new movie comes out week to week, and then when the movie's out of the theater, that's the number.
That's it. Unless it goes back into the theater again or something.
Right, and then you have to count it again.
Right. Like episode 1. I think became like a $1 billion movie or something when it went when Lucas re-released it like 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think so too. And that was, I'm sure, its second re-release, right?
It got released like 6 months after it was first released because they had like some charity thing for.
I will say I always felt like this bit went on a little long.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's the other cosmic cube.
So yeah, for a while here, this kind of turns into a run and find the MacGuffin plot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this guy is the collector from Guardians.
He is.
That's
his thing.
That's what he is. That's his name. Like, he also has a name. I just don't remember what it is. Yeah, I feel like with this ensemble cast, Arthur gets a little lost sometimes. Because, like, he's supposed to be, you know, kind of our eyes in.
Right.
Kind of our, like, normal straight man character.
Right.
And he is that in this. I don't think they make him, you know, too goofy or weird or make him the primary comic relief. But I do think that Zaphod's maybe on screen a little too much.
He
comparatively,
he kind of steals the show a little bit.
He kind of steals the show, yeah. And Zaphod has always been okay. So we come up with an excuse to get rid of his head, so that we don't have to keep doing that whole thing. Everything about the second head is not good.
Right.
I don't like it. But yeah, Zaphod always felt like a little bit more of a background character to me. Like, he's in the ensemble and he's with them, but I mean, it's really about, you know, it's sort of like Kirk and Spock. It's really about, at least that first book. It's about Arthur and Ford. Also, interestingly, Arthur Dent has a lot in common with Arthur from the Tick.
Yes.
They're kind of the same archetype if you think about it.
A very nervous person who is kind of thrust into the middle of the action through no, you know, fault of their own, I guess.
Yeah, but maybe has a bit of a thirst for adventure.
Yes,
and I mean, Arthur has that maybe more than he does because like Arthur, in every continuity, like is wanting to be a superhero, and then but is too scared and nervous and doesn't know if he can do it, and this Arthur gets thrust into all of this,
but then eventually realizes that he enjoys it, I guess.
And I feel like especially in this version, he reminds me a lot of what will in the Amazon show be called Arthur Everest, but before that he didn't have a last name. I don't know if you know that. But this guy, when he was younger, could have played that Arthur also.
Right.
Like, he also kind of looks like that character.
Yeah.
Like, you can imagine him in the moth suit. I'm not sure why he's still calling her Trisha. Have we not revealed her real name as Trillian yet?
I don't know.
Because that's just what she was going by when she was on Earth and when she was trying to get him to come with her. That's very Star Wars.
Right. These are very Terry Gilliam. That's what those characters remind me of a little bit.
Well, I think they're trying to be a parody of the of Daleks. They're saying resistance is useless instead. Like they're trying to be Daleks.
Right.
I think maybe this movie is intentionally trying to be a little bit more of a like straight up sci-fi parody than Hitchhiker had been before, and that's part of how you get it mainstream. Is like people that come to the theater and have never dealt with this material before will recognize stuff. Oh, you're making fun of that, and so it has kind of that Spaceballs quality.
Right.
And I think that's very smart.
Right.
Like, I think it works, and of course that's how you would visualize it, because there's obviously a lot of a lot of things that we're making fun of from mainstream sci-fi stuff in Hitchhiker, but it's not as squarely.
It's not a straight genre parody as
or even specific stuff. Like, you can't put your finger on it as easily as you can Galaxy Quest or Spaceballs.
Right.
Of like, you're like, he makes fun of tropes before he makes fun of specific. He doesn't have like the transporter gag.
Property. Right.
But he said that he came up with the Babelfish because in all the science fiction he read and watched growing up, you just go to a planet and everybody spoke English.
Right.
And so he's making fun of tropes before he's that's not a riff on specifically the Universal Translator.
Right.
It's a riff on every sci-fi thing that's ever not given you an explanation for that.
Yeah.
Obviously, Alan Rickman is genius casting, and if you go back, or maybe just the obvious choice, and if you go back and listen to, by the way, I think More Planet should have the word sphere at the end of them. I think that's really fun. Vogue Sphere.
And that's interesting. They were both in Galaxy Quest.
Although I think, that's what I was saying earlier. I think, and I hadn't thought of that until this viewing.
Right.
I think Planet Vogue Sphere, almost said Vlog Sphere.
Vlog.
That would be a really cool name for a YouTube channel or a website. Vlogsphere. Yeah. Well, file that away. But I think Planet Vlogsphere is kind of redundant.
Now, this looks very Doctor Who.
Yes,
like
it
70s
does.
Doctor Who, Rock Quarry, Alien Planet.
It does. Oh, and we were talking about this just a couple minutes ago, but the little crab things, what does that remind you of? The Lobsters in Tick Season 2. And they have the same voice. Like, I'm waiting for them at any point to start singing in a bathtub.
It's hit my head. Oh.
Oh, yes, the thinking cap! That's great. So I don't mean to keep going back to the well and to the same thing, but I can't help it. The Tick also has a thinking cap. It enhances people that have telepathic powers. But anyway, if you go back and listen to the radio play, and I want to say it's the same voice in the TV show, but I don't know that for sure.
Okay.
I just don't remember. Marvin sounds a lot like he does here.
Okay.
Like, this is Alan Rickman. You can recognize his voice. It sounds like him. But Alan Rickman just doing his normal voice sounding a little depressed sounds just like Marvin always sounded.
Right.
So we're about to get the fly swatter joke. There it is. This cracked my theater up to no end. I remember that. And every time I've watched this movie with my wife, she just rolls over in nonstop hysteria at this scene. And this kind of slapstick stuff doesn't usually get me that hard, but something about the timing of it is great.
Right.
Every time one of those things comes up and hits them in the face, it's really funny. Every time. And I also really like that as like a natural defense mechanism for a planet.
Get away.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's just, let's slightly irritate people.
You too.
To the point of getting rid of them. I also like that Arthur looks like he just got out of the bathtub this entire movie.
Right, the whole movie.
I don't remember if in the original material he's wearing a robe the whole time.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, he's wearing his pajamas.
But yeah, you always go, yeah. But again, this is another like making fun of a trope, and we did this in Galaxy Quest 2, where like you go down to the planet. You were on that commentary. We talked about this, where you go down to the planet and you have the creatures that like look totally harmless, but then it turns out that they're like the bad guys, or that they're gonna kill you. There's always gonna be some kind of like horrible trap, and it's sort of like, you know, when you try to like raid a tomb or something.
Right.
You know, like in Tomb Raider, and there's a and there are man-made traps. I just love the idea that this planet has natural booby traps everywhere.
Right.
It's great. So Marvin's my favorite Marvin line is not in this movie.
What is that?
My favorite Marvin line is, well, pardon me for breathing, which I never do anyway, so I don't know why I bothered to say it at all. Oh, God, I'm so depressed. And he has some good lines in this, but he never says that, and that never gets old. And I will take that quote to my grave. I will never forget that quote.
You're supposed to stop.
There are just weird little, like, images in this movie that flash me back to other movies. Like, the bit right before this looked like Harry Potter 3 to me. Like, with the night bus.
That was such a weird
movie. It was weird.
What the heck was that? Why was there that weird shrunken head? That's my favorite Harry Potter movie, though.
Sometimes I wonder if you're, like, fishing, like, when we're making commentaries, if you're, like, fishing around for the cough button, where, like, you start whispering, like, you don't want the audience to know what you're saying, like, oh my god, there might be Harry Potter 3 fans, but hey, Cap, do you remember... Do you remember how weird the night bus? Where's your mute button?
That is my favorite,
It's a lot of people's favorite. I never liked it.
I don't know why.
That is the most polarizing of them, I think.
Yes, it is.
So, you got the Vogons in this. There's some other sci-fi thing that has Vorgons. What's Vorgons?
Star Trek.
Is it?
That's the Toxic Tot.
Yes, the Toxic Tot!
Yes.
I knew that. That's Captain's Holiday.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. I'm a little rusty on my Star Trek. Some other sci-fi thing. What is that, Adam? It's a little serious. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Star Trek.
And then there's the Vorlons.
Don't make the mistake every 5-year-old that watched Star Trek makes and spell it Star Trek, okay? It's this little thing. It's called Star Trek.
Yeah.
He loses his arm. I forgot about that.
Vorlons.
Wow, look at her hair. Wow, look at that guy in the suit.
What is that? He has like a pin.
I don't know. He looks like a Dick Tracy villain.
Or a tick villain.
Well, see, I was trying to get away from that because I feel like 15% of this commentary has just been me prattling on about the Tig.
That guy's got a Bluetooth headset.
I was trying to do you a favor by not going to Tig again, and you're like, no, Cap, actually, it's more like a Tig villain. And you, of all people, should recognize that. And it looks like he has an eraser for a head.
What's the guy in front of them's deal? He just has a Bluetooth headset.
I love these aliens. They're great. I mean, seriously, it looks like a Sonnenfeld film.
Yes.
Oh, that's the other Marvin.
Oh,
did you see that? Did you see that?
I did not see that. No.
Well, we just looked at a picture of it, and that's him.
That's him right there.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they did a cameo for the original Marvin. That's really cool. There's a giant, like, pig-looking creature in the restaurant at the end of the universe portion of the because the miniseries does both sections. It goes all the way through restaurant, and there's a pig-looking thing that is amazing looking. The way they did the prosthetics on that, and it's one of the reasons why it's so inconsistent in its quality because that thing looks amazing.
It's like they spent too much money on.
Just that thing.
Certain thing, yeah. That
because it looks as good as the Vogons do.
Wow.
Again, the Vogons not to be confused with the Vorgons, who are from 26th or 28th century.
26th.
I think it's 26. Yeah.
And the Vorlons.
From Babylon 5. And that I didn't remember where that was from. It's this little thing. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Babylon 5. Adam. That is kind of a smaller thing, buddy. It's a little more underground than Star Trek. I don't know. And don't make the mistake in pronouncing that my kid did when he was a little younger, where he saw the box and he said, Babylon 5.
Babylon 5.
I do think this movie maybe shies away a little bit too much from Douglas Adams' morbid humor. I think it's a little afraid to make some of the blacker jokes.
Right.
And Hitchhiker doesn't go to, like, insanely super dark places until you start thinking about it too much.
Right.
That's what I love about it, is that on the surface it feels like more rainbows and butterflies, and then you start thinking about it, you're like, oh, that's horrifying. But, yeah, it doesn't go to some of the more, for lack of a better word, kind of cynical humor that Douglas Adams goes to. Not that he's cynical, but there's just places where he'll hit those beats. And I think the movie kind of strays away from that. And I don't think that would have made it any less kid friendly or whatever,
Right.
any less family friendly, because it's all intellectual, it's all cerebral.
Right.
It's not going to bother you unless you know what they're talking about.
Right. So was this PG-13?
It must have been. I mean, 99% of movies are now.
Yes. The rating system's so messed up.
It's made it broken. Yeah. Absolutely. PG shouldn't even be a thing. We don't use it.
I know. Well, G. They don't even use G.
Well, that's true. I
Yeah.
think PG we use a lot more than G now. There is no G, yeah.
But the problem is that G became the stigma of, like, oh, that's
adults
a
won't go
Disney
see that.
movie, yeah. Even though, like, back in the day, that was just general movies. Like, 2001 Space Odyssey is rated G.
Yeah, wholesome is a
Yeah.
four-letter word now, yeah.
Yeah, but that became...
Look at the arrows!
So it became...
They're huge!
Yeah.
And I think they have blood on them. Yeah, no, they have been calling her Trillian. It's weird that he's... Why doesn't he just adjust to her real name? I don't understand that. Now, that is in the book. that is how that happens. He has to give the authority to run the bypass through Earth and destroy the Earth, and he doesn't even read it, and he just signs it because he's incompetent and lazy and doesn't actually do his job. So this is our attempt to give Arthur kind of more of a character arc than he has in the book, because the characters kind of just... In the book, for the most part, I mean, there are endearing things about them, but they're pretty much archetypes.
Right,
and
he's the audience foil, basically.
Yeah, and all the characters pretty much just facilitate the grand ideas,
Right,
and the silly
right,
jokes.
right.
And, you know, the Hitchhiker, and I know Hitchhiker came before this, but Hitchhiker is the, like, comedic answer to the Matrix. Mm-hmm. Like, everybody in the Matrix is an archetype. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They're not really,
Real
like
right.
deep, fleshed out characters.
Right.
And so, in this, Arthur is this guy, again, like Arthur the Tick, that needs, like, to find his confidence. And, I don't know, maybe some of that is kind of in the book also, but it's we put a really fine point on it in this because we want the audience to be able to have something to latch onto character-wise. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's as good of a thing to do with it as anything if you're going to try to, again, make it more of a, like, square mainstream standard kind of narrative. 3-act story. Well, except for, like, the few parts where he's read it.
Read it. We've seen him read it.
Yeah, there's some bits here and there where he's read it. The sighing doors come from the radio show. Which, again, is kind of a riff on the fact that doors in every science fiction thing have their own...
sound.
Their own sound effect.
Right.
That kind of starts with Star Trek. This little thing called Star Trek that I didn't hear about until just today. This seems like a really obvious, typical thing to do. Where it's like, we've got to have... not only like the token hot chick taking a shower, but also somebody's got to use a towel in like a normal way.
Right.
To be fair, they're not doing this in like an eye candy, like over sexualized way or anything. But still, do we need this scene? Do we have to have this? Like we know that they're into each other. Do we have to have the awkward? Oh, this girl I like is naked right now. Do we have to have that scene? I don't know. That's one of the most ultra Hollywooded things in this, I think. The computer voice is also quite a bit like it is in the radio show.
Now, who does the computer voice? It sounded familiar when I heard it earlier.
Let me find out. Let me check. I'm glad you asked. I'm gonna find out. I can do
Thomas
that voice.
Lennon voices Eddie. Who's Thomas Lennon?
I don't know. That guy.
Oh, I've seen that guy before.
He's in a bunch of bad comedies.
Yeah.
He's in Balls of Fury.
He was on The State back in the 90s.
Of Magrathea. There's a big argument between him and Ford about whether or not, or maybe it's Dent, I can't remember, about whether or not Magrathea is actually a real place and like he doesn't believe him. And we kind of don't do that in this. Yeah, see, in the book and in the radio show, when we get to this part, there's this, like I said, there's this big argument about whether or not it's a real place. It's like, well, it's a planet. But you don't know for sure that it's this fabled Magrathea that I don't believe really exists. Because the book, sorry, it's hard talking about Hitchhiker. Because sometimes when I say book, I mean the novel. Sometimes I mean the book.
Right,
the
right.
Hitchhiker's
book,
Guide to the Galaxy.
It within the book.
Yeah. The guide in the book talks about how nobody believed, like the whole Magrathea thing became this big legend, but the book seems to know that it's real, but nobody believes it. So that's weird. Or maybe it was narration and not the book. That gets confusing in places.
Right.
But anyway, and it's kind of a fun, amusing bit. And so when the hologram shows up and it's like, welcome to Magrathea, he's still like, well, I don't know, maybe it's not real. And then it becomes very clear that it's real. Right. I'm pretty sure this whole action sequence doesn't happen there either.
Why do they launch missiles at them?
I don't know.
Maybe it's like that Arsenal of Freedom.
The Arsenal of Freedom.
The early bird gets wormed.
That's not an Arsenal of Freedom.
Isn't it?
No, the early bird gag, unless it's in both. The early bird gag is from Best of Both Worlds.
Well, yeah, it's that. But then he, instead of saying the early bird gets the worm, he says, remember, the early bird gets wormed, as in you don't buy my weapons. You're gonna
I don't remember that. Okay. You might be shocked to know this, but Arsenal of Freedom is not an episode I typically go back to on like a regular basis.
You don't like to see
it's
Picard and Beverly in the sand pit for half the episode?
No, but you know, I had excised that from my memory, but thanks so much for reminding me. I'd almost rather watch Attached. Only almost. We haven't even gotten the dolphin and the bowl of petunias yet, have we?
No.
I love that cereal box. It's amazing. Around the galaxy trip for two. Ooh, we need to take a still of that at some point and see if we can read more of what's on that box. Oh, this is the bowl of petunias part. Okay, he should be wearing the red glasses through more of this movie because they're hilarious and they're shaped weird.
Oh, there's the whale.
Look at the angle of those, the angularness of those glasses. They're weird and I want them. Would you make fun of me if I wore those glasses?
No, they're cool. Okay,
I'm gonna get them. I'm probably not gonna be able to get them, but if I could, I would wear those. And Sam Rockwell as Drax for this scene. Why is Gamora? So it's been too long since the narrator was just narrating. That's part of the problem with this movie is he can't really interject all that often in order to tell a regular movie formula story and in the time allotted.
Right.
But the bowl of petunias thing is another pretty popular, well-remembered thing. One of the things that was always weird about this in the radio show and the book to me is the narrator says that there's all this talk between like scientists and philosophers or whatever about what we would understand about the nature of the universe if we knew why the bowl of petunias was thinking what it was thinking as it fell, and what it was, and we'll get it here in a second, what the bowl is and all this stuff, by the way, with the whale and like naming things is hilarious, but the bowl of petunia says, in his mind, says not again, and he's like, what would we understand about the universe if we knew why it said not again?
Right.
But the real question for me is, how do you know what a bowl of petunias was thinking?
Right.
How do you know that?
Right.
Oh no, not again. If we knew exactly why the bowl of petunias had thought that, we should know a lot more about the nature of the universe than we do now. I wasn't sure if it went all the way and had that part. I really respect it for taking that all the way. But how would anybody know that?
Right.
But then, how much can I logically nitpick and question Hitchhiker? It's always a question. And that's the thing about this material, is that it almost has an internal logic. But a lot of what works about it is that it gets away with not having enough internal logic that it can do anything it wants to.
Right.
And so it's tough to decide when you're being too critical of it.
Right. It's not like they threw out some rules, like Star Trek Discovery.
Right, yeah. He's got to get one in every video. Adam, this movie's holding up okay.
Yeah.
I can't believe this is the first time you've seen this since it came out.
Yeah.
14 years.
I know.
It's wild. This movie comes out 2 years after I meet my wife.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. We saw it in the theater together.
Oh, cool.
That's really well delivered. That's pretty funny. And here in a little bit, we're gonna meet Slarty Bartfarst. And we don't handle the revelation of his name the way we do in the book, and that's unfortunate because it's really funny. Arthur just like loses it and can't stop laughing because his name, sort of like Vogon poetry, always gets the same reaction from everybody that hears it. It doesn't torture them like Vogon poetry does, but everybody that hears his name, it makes them die with laughter. He's got to go into that Stargate.
Oh.
It closed just before he could get in it. Oh, he has really red hair.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was wondering, what is Martin Freeman's real hair color? Because it's usually like a blonde color.
Maybe he's said to be red-haired in the book, and I don't remember it.
Maybe so.
Maybe that's why they made it red, but
like,
we don't seem to be all
he
that...
wore a wig in The Hobbit.
Oh, yeah.
What was his hair in, like, Black Panther?
Oh my god, that is who that is.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys that's gotten distinguished with age, right?
Yeah. You see him in...
Like, he's a cooler looking dude as he's gotten older.
And he turns up in a lot of stuff that you wouldn't think.
And I guess he doesn't, like, disappear, but I just keep forgetting. This is a cool shot, by the way. I like that a lot. That could have been the poster. If you wanted to do a really dramatic Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy poster, that's your poster.
Somebody should do, like, one of those cool artist rendering posters that you all...
Yeah, or an alternative Blu-ray box.
Yes.
Okay, so this is not a thing I say very often. I reserve this phrase for things that I think really deserve it. This is a place where the fakeness of this looks good.
Right.
I do not buy that we are remotely where we're supposed to be here. It looks like a stage. Right. It looks like a soundstage planet. I don't care.
Right.
I like it.
Right. It fits with the kind of cartoonish nature of some of the other settings in the film.
Like, Bill he's clearly standing in... That's not Bill Nye.
No. It's Bill Nye, N-I-G.
Oh, Nye. Bill Nye. Yeah.
Yes.
Bill Nye, the not science-y guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, we're clearly standing in front of blue screen. I don't care.
Yeah.
Or at least, in these close-up shots, I think it's a blue screen.
Oh, I'm sure it's...
I actually can't totally... Sorry,
It's
Barfars.
It's getting a little... It's got that mid-2000s Sky Captain.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
A little bit.
Yep. That's one of Marvin's most famous lines. I could count your calculations for survival, but you won't like it. Or just you won't like it. He said you won't like it all the time. But yeah, I like that he looks really sad in the face. I like seeing a Marvin that looks like he could smile if he wanted to. Believe it or not, this movie was merchandised okay. You can get that.
Really?
You can get a Marvin, and I kind of want one.
Really?
I've seen it a couple times at conventions, and I've almost bought it before.
Really?
Yep. They've got battery-operated ones that, like, walk around and stuff.
Cool.
Yeah. It is cool. You know what they didn't put out, though? A guide, and it's never been done.
Really?
As far as I know, I think there is some custom fan ones, but like somebody needs to make that where it's. I think I did a rant on this in a video once where I'm like, how come nobody's made the the virtual guide? The way you do it, what I would think you do now is instead of, I mean, it would be cool to get a prop that you could like type things in and it's an encyclopedia and it tells you things from this universe. But what I would do is I just make it a tablet.
Right.
I just have a cover that you open it up and you.
Well, now they got those folding screens and all this stuff coming out with stuff, so maybe they could do it like a book.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
We live in the future, Adam.
Well, it's not. Some of the bugs haven't been worked out yet. It seems like, just based on the news reports.
We still live in the future, though.
It's still pretty cool.
Dude, I'm reading comics now on a tablet. Right. We're living in the future.
I know. If you go back and listen to the radio play or read the book, it feels like we made a big massive leap here, and I can't remember what's in between it right now as we're talking, but it feels pretty truncated. Stuff, right?
Yeah. And I don't mean to be a broken record about that and just talk about the differences between this and the source material, but it is just such a strange thing to try to adapt.
Right.
This is awesome.
Right.
Okay, this doesn't look so great.
The mountain doesn't, but when you saw it, yeah.
But it's really creatively put together. It's really pretty. This is a thing when I was growing up that I couldn't have imagined I'd ever get to see, is somebody's attempt at realizing on screen what the planet production place looks like. The
Planet Factory.
The factory? Okay, she needs to get a different coat because from certain angles it makes you look like a chicken. Oh, actually, she's not wearing it. He's wearing it. Okay, well, no. Carry on, Zaphod People Brox. You should look like a chicken. No, he doesn't look like a chicken. Look at what he's wearing. It's intentional.
I know.
They did it on purpose. I love the inconsistency of his like sort of sometimes southern accent. Like I don't know what that accent is he's doing, but it's great because it just goes in and out.
What was that show that she was watching?
For all this time she's been watching cartoons, and I believe that is from the source material. It is another world. Man, I don't think I've ever fully appreciated the look of Deep Thought, but like looking at it again, that is one of the coolest things in this movie.
Right.
And I love that Deep Thought is a giant statue of a whale. That's got to be like some British cartoon show. Like I bet there's people in Britain that know what that is.
Right.
Or they made it just for this, but I doubt it. Oh, that's another thing we haven't talked about at all. Is that this is pretty clearly, I mean, obviously, this is an American production, and it does a pretty good job of passing itself off as a British thing.
Right.
I mean, for my taste, it's got too many characters with American accents.
Yeah.
I wish it was just a British thing.
Right.
You know, maybe I'm cool with Zaphod having an American accent, but I kind of wish Ford didn't. I kind of want everybody to have a British accent. But we keep talking about all the stuff that is clearly influenced by Doctor Who and stuff. Like, this feels like a BBC thing.
It does.
And it's not.
Right.
That's pretty cool. So you aware of this? There was supposed to be a movie all the way back in the mid-'80s.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was optioned, and, like, all this stuff came up at the same time. Like, like the book gets super popular, and then they go, okay, let's do the BBC miniseries, and then a movie, and then they did the text based
computer
game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the floppy disk game,
disk, right.
which I have played, and I'm not any good at games like that, so I didn't get very far.
Right.
Because it's always like, go right, don't know right. And I'm like, I don't know how to play this. But it was cool because it came with stuff. It came with like a towel and some like artifacts from this material. Yeah, it was cool. But at the same time, a movie was supposed to happen, and I watched an interview with Douglas Adams on Letterman.
Oh.
And they talk about it like the movie is just going to happen, like it's a done deal, like it's almost in pre-production
like
or something.
Vintage Letterman from like the 80s.
85.
Okay.
Yeah. And they talk about it like it's definitely going to happen.
Wow.
So that was in limbo for 30 years.
Wow.
20 years.
What hung it up?
20 years. Sorry, I can do math.
Nobody put the money behind it, or?
I don't remember. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look that up. It might have been because of some of the turmoil with the miniseries or something. I'm not sure.
I just realized, so this movie came out like right at the same time that Doctor Who came back on television.
That's right. Well, Doctor Who comes back in
05.
Is it 05? I thought it was like 03 or 04. Wow.
In March of 2005.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Because this looks like what you might have imagined Modern Who to look like, and then you watch Modern Who, and it sort of looks like this.
It does, especially more recent. I mean, when it first came back, it was a little more cheesy.
I was going to say when it first came back, it was shot a little darker, and then we lightened it up with Tenet. Yeah. And then lately,
it does look like this.
It
it's just
started
the production values now.
Eccleston was at night a lot. He was in the dark a lot.
He was.
I mean, that pilot with the mannequins, that's a horror movie. And they keep making horror movies with that show. And more recently, I think they've gotten a lot more back to that since Matt Smith.
I think you're right. I think it's... Yeah, I just meant more like the production values itself are more cinematic now than they were.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you meant. Yeah. You're saying they look cheaper.
Yes.
And cheesier.
Yes. But I agree with you. No, as far as the design, definitely Whovian.
Yeah.
Both of the
You see why I want this to be in continuity with Doctor Who?
Right.
I mean, maybe not specifically this movie, but just Hitchhiker. I think it would be really cool to spin off Hitchhiker. Like, wouldn't it be neat if you did a Doctor Who episode where the Doctor like runs into one of these characters,
right? And
then you just spin it off.
That would be definitely interesting. I wonder what the rights issues to that would be. Or
I don't know. I would think. Well, I'm sure it's one of those things where you have different rights holders for the movie than you do TV, right? Like I would assume
still has the rights to this.
I would assume BBC still has the rights to do television,
right?
But I don't know. Yeah, I would think maybe the rights are the same.
Yeah, I don't know how it would have been so long ago.
Yeah. But if the BBC still had it, there'd be nothing stopping them.
There would be nothing stopping them, right?
Unless the estate has
the rights to, and then they sold the right.
Or they sign a contract where they have control of, or where they have like signing rights or something.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
I think he's a good choice for Bart Forrest. I like how he kind of underplays the whole thing, and he just looks like really kind of tired and worn out. I like how nonchalant he is about everything. Where it's like, yeah, I just work for this place that builds planets.
Right. Just day at the office for him.
His attitude, it feels counter to the way I always saw him in the book, and I really respect that different interpretation where it's like nothing surprises me anymore. He just has this expression of like,
right,
yep.
I mean, the
universe is weird
because he builds planets for a living, so it's like
everything would just wash off your back,
right.
He strikes me as almost like a really weary, elderly Willy Wonka or something. I'm getting kind of a Willy Wonka vibe
jaded,
off him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
more than Willy Wonka was
Who was jaded. You get nothing! I'm going to be doing a commentary on that in the not-too-distant future.
Oh, really?
Yeah. DJ is a big fan of that movie. He and I have been talking about doing a commentary on that forever.
The symbol that on his shirt looked like the logo for the America West Airlines, which does not exist anymore.
Did it exist in 2005? Because that would be the strangest product placement in the history of product placement. What we're going to do is we're going to take an existing logo from a company that wants to give us money, and we're going to make it the logo for the Planet Building Factory.
Right.
So, I want to say that's not what they did.
I would hope not.
Yeah, and see, jaded elderly Willy Wonka here, those were his Oompa Loompas. Mm-hmm. See, those guys in the yellow, and they were in orange jumpsuits, just like Oompa Loompas. In the theater, this was one of those scenes that felt like real surreal, and at any point, the other shoe was going to drop, and it was going to be, like, horrible and tragic. And that's exactly what happens. Like, this scene does a really good job of kind of building tension without you even realizing it's building tension. And I don't know what that is and how exactly you accomplish it, but everything about this scene feels off. It's wrong. And then all of a sudden, things will start exploding. Do you remember this?
Yes.
This is where we're going to have Marvin have to come in and save the day. We're about to do the time travel thing.
Right.
I want to say the scene gets interrupted with laser fire.
Huh.
I could be totally wrong, but that's what I remember. I remember being in the theater going like, this is messed up. Something's going to happen here. It's these close-ups and weird angles and so the whole idea of dolphins being way smarter than us is just building on a thing that people have been assuming for a long time, or like talk about like they're so intelligent. What if they were more intelligent than we were?
Right.
I like subverting that with the mice thing, where it's like, well, mice have always been thought to have really small brains, but they're actually even smarter than dolphins.
Right.
And they just... Do you remember this whole thing where they do experiments on us by making us think that we're doing experiments on them?
Right.
That breaks down, of course, when you think about all the ways in which mice get, like, horribly tortured and murdered.
Right.
There's that. Yeah, see, everything was off.
Right.
It was wrong. It was bad, Adam.
Right.
What was my team?
Wonder how many mice actors they had.
How many Falcons does it take James Lightball? That's great. You know what I would have gone with?
What?
How many licks does it take to get to the center of the Tootsie Pop? So this is where we get to the kind of sappy stuff, because you got to have that. I don't think this whole thing is especially compelling. I think it's handled okay. Like I said, I think they have decent enough chemistry together. But I don't think anybody watched this movie and was like, yay, they're getting together. You know what I mean?
Right. They didn't do a long enough time to build really the relationship for us to care about her, you know.
Oh, that's pretty funny. I forgot about that. I like that they do the obvious, like starting to conclude that love story thing, and then they go, no, this is not what you came here for. So I would implore Doctor Who fans, people that are maybe younger than us and grew up on Doctor Who, because Doctor Who's been on long enough now, Adam, that kids grew up with it, which should make you feel like an old person.
Right.
And I mean, obviously, if you're watching this with us right now, you're already watching this, but I would implore Doctor Who fans to go back to this movie because I think they'd like it.
Right, right.
I think this is a thing that is not on a lot of people's radar.
Right.
I think there's probably a lot of people that don't even know about this movie that would like it. Yeah, I remembered that differently. I didn't remember the mice tying him down thing. I thought that scene got interrupted with the laser fire we're about to get here. Thanks, man. See, like I said, I'm pretty sure Marvin doesn't save everybody in the book.
Uh-oh.
So he gets shot. Well, I remember this as being like an epic sacrifice thing. Maybe he just gets shot. I don't remember. Okay, I guess now we'll just have to watch this and see what happens because I'm not remembering this right. This did get an emotional response.
Yeah.
In my theater.
Hmm.
And I think some of that is just he's a cute creature.
Right.
But they didn't make him really likable. I don't even remember how we get to the time travel thing.
I don't either.
Because I'm pretty sure that happens. I'm pretty sure they reverse time. And then he gets up. That's how I remember this. It's weird that I'm remembering this ending not as well as the rest of it. They're like, oh,
here.
I have to turn around. It's really hard to move my body because I'm enormous. There seems to be the school of thought that trailers and Winnebagos are always funny. Especially when you, like, blow them up or drive them off a cliff or something. Okay, yeah, here we go. Maybe it's not a time travel thing? I remember there being a time travel thing here. Oh, yeah, the Depressed Gun. I forgot about that. Am I mixing things up because of Galaxy Quest? Is that what I'm doing?
Maybe so.
I can't face another day. I totally forgot about the mood gun. Okay, I guess I thought the mood gun was a time travel device.
Was the Omega-13?
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway. So that didn't happen. I completely remembered that wrong. You know what that reminds me of? Did I ever have you watch The Return of Captain Invincible?
No.
Oh, you haven't seen that?
I haven't seen that one.
There's a gun in that called the Giggle Gun.
Oh, really?
And it makes people laugh uncontrollably.
There it is. American Way.
That's really funny.
See?
Is it just
that's what it looks like? Look. Oh,
they did that on purpose. They just flipped it upside down. Oh, that's a joke I never would have gotten without you coming over and watching this with me. Okay, so I'm going to be annoying because you keep forcing me in a corner to do this anyway, so I'll do it on purpose. My favorite gun that's not really a guns is in an episode of The Tick called Grandpa Wore Tights. And in that episode, there's a flashback where there is... I probably talked about this on camera before. Where there is a... I'm not on camera right now. I'm on audio. Called a ray gun. And it turns everybody that you shoot it at into a guy named Ray.
I've seen that, yes. You showed me
and
that
did I show you that
yes.
one? And then the elderly superhero that's telling the story goes, and then there was the Tommy gun.
Yes.
That joke never gets old. So, I'm a stickler for this. This kind of thing, it tends to annoy me with stuff where we have like really obvious sequel bait. You want to set up the restaurant in case you're going to get a sequel. What makes it kind of baity is where it's like this nod and wink to the audience, like if you know what we're talking about, this is cool for you. I just don't like the look that Ford gives past the camera. It's like, I know this cool restaurant at the end of the universe. Yeah, I love that. We could have done that in a more natural way that didn't feel like sequel bait. It is really unfortunate that they didn't get to make Restaurant, because I think with their sensibilities, Restaurant is a better story for them. And they built some really cool sets for this. So they would have done neat stuff with it, I'm sure. And it's already done. This feels like a super short movie.
This segment's pretty cool.
It is. I love the ludicrousy of the way we rebuild the Earth. Where, like, we're building his house. You know? Because the planet, like, evolved. But I guess we have to build it exactly like it was in the... Like, I guess you have to assume that we built... In the first place, we built it to evolve? I guess that's the only way that makes sense. Some pretty nice uses of stock footage there. To not feel too stock footage-y. The restaurant's at the other end of the universe. I remember that part. That was nice of them to do. That was Douglas Adams' head at the end. Yeah, he had just died. If memory serves. And I think he would have overall been really happy with that.
Yeah, you're right. This was a very short... It felt short.
It feels real short. But they showed him a lot of respect, I think.
That was Kelly MacDonald as the reporter.
Who's that?
Oh, she's been in a bunch of different things.
Additional Vogon voices by the League of Gentlemen.
What is that?
Not to be confused with the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, who I don't think tend to do voice work. I don't think that's what they do.
No.
Which Vogon did the Invisible Man play?
And Alan Quartermain.
Alan Quartermain.
Wonder if they're gonna reboot that.
So this is one of those songs, like the Lego Movie song, Everything Is Awesome, where you can like easily cover it in like a million different styles. And I wish there was an album of just like 9 different versions of this song. Where like we got this
by Jim Henson. That's why
it is a Jim Henson movie.
Okay.
When you said that, I hesitated because I thought it was, but I wasn't sure. I mean, I also thought there was time travel in this movie, so what do I know? But yeah, so we got the like lounge singing version, and at the beginning we got the Broadway musical version. I want like the death metal version, and I want the country version. You know, I want the Johnny Cash version of this song.
That reminds me of there's a Robert Altman movie adaptation of a Philip Marlowe story called The Long Goodbye from the 70s, and they have a song by John Williams did the music. He did like an original song called the Long Goodbye, and they play different like versions of it, like during the opening credits. Like,
oh, cool!
Like on the radio, and then it'll be like, and then he goes into the grocery store, and it's on like the cheesy music.
I love
version.
it when we do stuff like that, where like the only song you ever hear is like the theme song of the thing. I kind of thought Long Good Night. There you go. I kind Hard Goodbye is a Sin City story. But I don't know if you know anything about Sin City. And if
I saw the first movie, and that was it.
Okay. I mean, the Hard Goodbye is in that movie.
Okay.
But it doesn't come up on the screen. That's the Marv story. I'm pretty sure. They don't show you that. I wish they'd done that in Sin City, by the way. I wish they put the names of the stories on the screen. That'd be cool. I forgot how much I love this song.
It was a Long Goodbye. I don't know why I said Long Goodbye.
Long Goodbye. Okay, there you go.
I don't know. I couldn't remember.
Adam's getting real self-conscious about his titles. Could be worse. You could think that the movie you're watching has time travel that doesn't have time travel. I'm glad they did this, where they give you some more bits of the guide. I wish the guide somehow had more of a function in the film.
Mm-hmm.
Now, every single one of these is verbatim.
Mm-hmm.
When the book is talking.
Why was there a shopping cart there?
It probably came from the Improbability drive.
Mm-hmm. Battle shorts.
Battle shorts. We're just listening right now.
Uh-oh.
And see, we didn't do very much of this kind of thing during the movie because we would have had to constantly divert
Right.
from the story.
Right.
And so, we're in the credits, so now we can just tell a big, long, unrelated story.
Right.
Which the book did constantly, and that's kind of what it was all about.
By a dog.
It's funny that they chose specifically this one, the battle fleet being swallowed by a dog thing, because that also feels like Men in Black.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, that's the crux of that story.
Right.
Is the galaxy is on Orion's belt? Yeah. I kind of wish they had done book stuff all through the credits.
Yeah. So is that the only one?
I think there was maybe one more. Or maybe not. Who wrote the soundtrack?
I don't know.
I'm going to find out.
Music by what?
Joby Talbot?
Who's that?
I don't know. I didn't know Joby was a person's name.
League of Gentlemen.
Apparently.
Yeah. BBC
okay, so there's a BBC series called The League of Gentlemen, and I guess they also get credited as a group that does voice work.
Okay.
Interesting. So we don't know him because he's squarely a BBC guy or a UK guy. Yeah. League of Gentlemen's Apocalypse. So that's like a whole series. And so they did 3 shows and a film, and their film came out in 2005 at the same time as this did.
Okay.
He hasn't done anything I've ever heard of. Besides this. But it's really nice that they went into so much British talent. I mean, that's...
Right.
I was acting like it's a big surprise that this feels so much like a British thing. Obviously, we went to British talent. But that helps it feel less watered down than it could have.
Right.
Like, would you agree with me? Most of the comedy in this is squarely British comedy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And is Douglas Adams' sensibilities. So it doesn't feel like they're trying to water down for American audiences. Right. Story-wise, there is, of course, some of that just in structure and a couple of added subplots. But the atmosphere of it, the tone of it,
definitely
is just what it should be.
Right, exactly.
Why do I really enjoy watching that with you, man?
I thought there was going to be a little thing at the end of the credits, but I guess that's just the way the Marvel movies.
That's how we make movies now.
Yes,
but that was the Dark Ages.
YouTube credits
YouTube credits.
Netflix credits for all the people who dubbed it in all the other different
They
countries.
were really ahead of their time. A year before YouTube, they had all these YouTube credits. Well, folks, thanks a lot for listening. Hope you enjoyed our commentary on The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I'm glad we did that.
Yeah, it was fun.
And I hadn't thought about that movie in a long time. And I was flipping around Netflix going, Adam and I were like, we gotta pick something. What are we going to watch? Yeah. And I was like, that'll be fun. I've always wanted to talk about that. So a bunch of stuff came back to me as we talked about that.
Yeah, it was fun. It's been a long time.
So, Adam and I will be back with you again down the road, folks, with another sci-fi movie commentary, or at least some kind of genre, something. I always go to you for sci-fi stuff, because you really know your science fiction. But, well, thanks again, folks. We will see you again in the very not-too-distant future. I was Captain Logan.
And I was Adam.
Later, folks.